Let's attempt to do this next one all in one go. So what happened is that I was looking after her and I was making homemade ice cream. I gave her a little because on that day she was behaving herself very well, but it turns out that his daughter cannot eat ice cream because it makes her very hyperactive. When he arrived home, he immediately noticed that his daughter, just correct this mistake here, was behaving very strangely. Okay, for here, you would hear entonces, and then they would go on. And then what happened, so to happen is pasar, right? To pass. So this is a dot, be pasó, like this. And for this what, you can say lo que or simply que. You'll hear both. So it just depends on which one you would like to use. I use lo que quite a lot. So entonces lo que pasó es que. Now I was looking after her. This, remember, is setting the scene. So this is the background that was happening before the action. So I was looking after her. Estaba. And then to look after, remember, is cuidar, which is reflexive. Or actually it's not reflexive, but estaba cuidando. So this was the I was with the ing, looking after her, right? Estaba cuidándola. So I was looking, this is the ing with ando. And remember that cuidar means to look after, and then the her just gets hooked on the end. Okay, so entonces lo que pasó es que estaba cuidándola. And I was making y I was, well, to do or to make, we have hacer, right? So a line past be hacía. I was making homemade ice cream. So ice cream is helado and homemade would be casero. So, helado casero. Now I gave her, so to her I gave, right? To her, le, and di, le di, a little, un poco, because on that day, porque en ese día. So día is another word where it ends in a, but it's a masculine word. So this is why we have that with ese and not esa. So en ese día, actually in that day, on that day, she was behaving. Okay, here we have wasing and wearing line past, behaving herself. So we have to behave is comportarse. See how these reflexives popping up everywhere. Comportarse is the verb. So we put the se up front, right? And se comportaba, like this, for she was behaving herself. The se represents herself, and all of this is she was behaving, comportaba. Muy bien. But it turns out, this is a very useful phrase that we use a lot in English as well. And you would say in Spanish, pero resulta que. You hear that a lot. It turns out, kind of like the result that. Resulta que his daughter cannot eat ice cream. Okay, so it would be su hija cannot, no puede comer ice cream helado because it makes her very hyperactive. Okay, so porque. Now it makes her, in Spanish you hear a lot this se pone, because she puts herself, or it puts herself, or itself, or he puts himself. You hear that a lot, like hoy se pone loco, you know, he went crazy. Or you know, you hear that where we would use in English, it makes her hyperactive. In Spanish, it would be she puts herself hyperactive. Se pone, se pone. And then hyperactive would be hiperactiva, ending in A, because we're referring to this little girl, una niña. Porque se pone, a very hyperactive, muy hiperactiva. This se pone will probably do, if I haven't already, I can't remember, a dedicated module on using poner reflexively to express these things. With English, we say get or to become. So, because she becomes or she gets very hyperactive. We could say that in English, right? Because she gets very hyperactive or she becomes very hyperactive. It makes her very hyperactive. All of that in Spanish would be covered with se pone, muy hiperactiva. Then the last sentence is, when he arrived home, he immediately noticed that his daughter was behaving very strangely. Okay, so when he arrived home, we have cuando llegó, because llegar is to arrive. So he arrived would be llegó, a dot. And what you would hear also, cuando llegó él, just to stress it, cuando llegó él, he immediately noticed. This immediately is going to go first. Sounds more natural. Inmediatamente. He noticed. This is something that we've covered before. So this is darse cuenta, right? De que, that whole phrase. So se dio cuenta de que. That's a dot in the past. That is quite advanced. But if you go back to that module on darse cuenta, you'll see how this is really working kind of with a magnifying glass. So se dio cuenta de que that his daughter, de que su hija was behaving. So here we're just repeating what we have up here. To behave is comportarse. So se comportaba. Very strangely. Strange in Spanish is like, it looks like rare in English. Raro. Raro. That's how they would say strange. But it's going to be rara here because we're again referring to esta niña, this girl. So we have muy rara. Entonces lo que pasó es que estaba cuidándola y hacía helado casero. Le di un poco porque en ese día se comportaba muy bien, pero resulta que su hija no puede comer helado porque se pone muy hiperactiva. Cuando llegó él, inmediatamente se dio cuenta de que su hija se comportaba muy rara.